Hello everyone, and welcome to Fresh Master Channel. Today, we are going to have some story from Reddit. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment down below. These simple clips mean a lot to the future of this channel.
Stone Ridge had always been a quiet town, the kind where everyone knew each other's business before the gossip had even fully formed. It was a place of deep-rooted traditions, where families stayed for generations, and outsiders were forever marked as newcomers. Among the town's most respected names was the Masterson family, known for their successful hardware business and unwavering presence in the community. Jack Masterson grew up under the weight of his family's expectations. His father had once run the store with a firm but fair hand, teaching Jack the importance of hard work and loyalty. But while his father was a man of consistency, Jack had always been restless. He was driven, not just to maintain the family legacy, but to carve his own path. He was well-liked, admired even by his peers and the town elders who saw in him the promise of a worthy successor. Laura Johnson, on the other hand, had a different story. Unlike the Mastersons, the Johnsons weren't town royalty, but they were respected nonetheless. Her parents, Brenda and Thomas, worked tirelessly to provide a stable home, and Laura had grown up with a mix of love and discipline. She was smart, ambitious, and independent, but deep down, she always felt the need to prove herself, to be more than just another girl from Stone Ridge. Their romance was the kind that small-town legends were made of. Jack and Laura had met in high school, their connection instant and undeniable. He was the charming, confident boy who could make anyone laugh, and she was the strong-willed, intelligent girl who saw through his bravado. They balanced each other in ways neither had anticipated, and before long, they were inseparable. Marriage had seemed like the natural next step, and for a while, they were happy. But youth, as it often does, brought mistakes. The pressure of adulthood, of responsibilities neither had been ready for, began to crack the foundation of their once solid love. And then, one night, everything changed. A betrayal, a moment of weakness, a mistake that could never be undone. Jack left town without a word, leaving Laura behind to face the consequences of their unraveling life alone. For 6 years, Jack stayed away. He built a life elsewhere, far from the whispers and the judgment, finding solace in work and purpose in raising Kansas, a girl who had become his entire world. But fate, relentless as ever, had its own plans, and a call from home brought him back to Stone Ridge. Now, he stood on the threshold of a past he had tried to outrun, unaware that the ghosts he had left behind were still waiting. Brenda Johnson turned to her daughter, her voice laced with curiosity. "I ran into Cynthia Larson at the store today. She mentioned that Jack is back in town. Apparently, he's stepping in to manage the family business while Jeff recovers from his accident." Laura's hand clenched around the can she was placing in the pantry, the impact a little too forceful. "Jack?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. Brenda nodded, eyeing her closely. "Yes, Jack. Do you even remember him? Your husband, or ex-husband? Are you two officially divorced yet?" A tired sigh escaped Laura's lips. "Mom, I really don't want to talk about him." She hesitated before adding, "And I have no idea if we're legally separated. I never received any divorce papers." Brenda arched an eyebrow. "Did you ever file?" Lowering her gaze, Laura admitted, "No, he left. I just assumed he'd take care of it." Brenda shook her head in disbelief. "That's absurd. He disappeared for 6 years. No messages, no explanations. You mean to tell me you're still technically married to him? Do you even still have feelings for the man?" Silence stretched between them as Laura stared at the floor, unwilling to answer. Brenda's tone grew sharper. "You're not one of those women who tolerate mistreatment, are you? Jack abandoned you. That's on him. If he's back, you should divorce him. He was great when you married, but a man who vanishes doesn't deserve your loyalty. You're young. You can find someone better." "Mom," Laura said firmly, "I'm 27. I have a good job and my own house. I'm not dependent on you or Dad, so please stop trying to run my life." "I just want you happy," Brenda insisted. "You've changed since he left. If he cared, he wouldn't have disappeared. Maybe he left for someone else." "Jack wouldn't cheat," Laura said quickly. Brenda looked surprised at her defense of him. Laura had always maintained they hadn't fought before he left, but she never explained why he vanished. Brenda doubted she'd ever know. That night, Laura couldn't sleep. Memories of Jack haunted her, how he'd been charming and devoted before everything fell apart. She blamed herself for their problems. Now, with him back, she dreaded facing him. What could she even say? 2 days later, Laura visited her mom again. Her younger sister, Kate, had just returned from her summer job. "I saw Jack today," Kate said casually. "He came by to play some ads. Want to hear about it?" "If Laura doesn't, I do," Brenda interjected. "What does he look like?" "Still ridiculously handsome," Kate teased. "No weight gain, no hair loss, just a rugged look, jeans and a t-shirt." "Did he say anything?" Laura asked softly. "Not much. He dropped off the ad and paid, but he had his daughter with him. She's beautiful," Kate added, watching Laura closely. "He has a daughter?" Brenda exclaimed. "That's why he left. Another woman and a baby?" "I don't think so," Kate argued. "She's too old to have been born after he left. Probably 12 or 13. "Jack's 28 now," Brenda said thoughtfully. "He'd have been 16 when she was born. Doesn't add up?" "He introduced her as Kansas. She's athletic and clearly adores him," Kate said. "Is her hair dark like his?" Laura asked hesitantly. "Blonde. Stunning, really. Oh, and technically, since you're still married, you're her stepmom," Kate joked. "Enough, Kate," Brenda scolded as Laura fled the room. "There's more to this story. Secrets don't last long in a small town." Meanwhile, as Jack and Kansas left the office, she asked, "Who was that girl watching you?" "Kate, my ex-wife's sister," Jack replied. "She probably didn't expect to see me." "Was your wife as pretty as her?" Kansas asked. "Even more," Jack said softly. Kansas studied him. "You loved her. Why did she cheat?" "I wouldn't have told you if I knew we'd move back here," Jack admitted. "Don't mention it. It's her story to tell." "You still care about her, don't you?" Kansas said. Jack smiled. "What happened hurt, but it led me to you. I wouldn't trade you for anything." Kansas grinned. "Brian was a great dad, but I'm glad I get to call you Dad now." "That's what Brian wanted," Jack said warmly. "He trusted me to raise you, and I'm honored." "How will you find me a new mom if you're still married?" Kansas teased. "Let's handle school and settling in first," Jack said firmly. "We'll sort the divorce later." "Okay," Kansas replied. "But every woman in town will want to marry you. We just need to pick the right one." "If she doesn't accept you, she's not for me," Jack said with a chuckle. "You're my priority." Kansas hugged him tightly, grateful for his unwavering love. At home, Jack laid down rules with his mom, Janet. No interfering in his personal life, especially where Laura was concerned. Surprisingly, she agreed. Later, Kansas mentioned meeting Kate. "Grandma, do you think Laura is as pretty as Kate?" "Laura is beautiful," Janet admitted. "If it were up to me, those two would still be together, and you'd have siblings. But let's change the subject before Jack hears us." At soccer tryouts, Laura noticed a skilled blonde girl. As she approached, the girl turned to face her. "Hi, I'm Coach Masterson," Laura said. "You're talented." The girl's eyes widened. "I'm Kansas Masterson, your ex-husband's daughter. If you think I'll cause problems, I'll switch sports." Laura reeled, but quickly composed herself. "Your playing time depends on your effort, not your dad. I'll be fair." Kansas grinned. "Grandma knew you were the coach but didn't tell Dad." "He'll be shocked when I tell him." Laura tensed. "Your father's not here, is he?" "Nope." "He's working," Kansas replied. Then lowering her voice, she added, "Dad said you're the prettiest cheating strumpet he's ever seen." Laura felt like she'd been punched. Her breath caught and her knees buckled as she sank to the grass. Kansas had expected anger, denial, maybe even indifference. But not this. Not raw devastation. For years, she had resented Laura Masterson, the woman who had supposedly shattered Jack's heart. She had rehearsed this moment, imagined the satisfaction of delivering those words. But now, watching Laura crumble, something felt wrong. Laura Masterson wasn't the villain she had built up in her mind. The girls on the team respected her, even admired her. And her reaction, genuine pain, not guilt, made Kansas hesitate. Suddenly, she wasn't sure who the bad guy really was. Kansas trudged to the bench, bracing for the inevitable dismissal. "What did you just say to Coach Masterson?" demanded a woman she assumed was the assistant coach, flipping through her clipboard. "What's your name?" "Kansas Masterson. I'm sorry if I caused trouble," she said. The woman's eyes widened. "Masterson? Are you related to Jack Masterson?" "He's my dad," Kansas said, standing taller. "You should leave," the woman said bluntly. "Coach doesn't need reminders of her deadbeat husband on the field." Kansas nodded and turned toward the gate. But before she could leave, a hand caught her shoulder. She spun around, only to find herself in Laura's trembling embrace. "I'm so sorry," Laura whispered, clutching her tightly. Kansas stood frozen, unsure how to react as the entire team stared in stunned silence. Laura pulled back, wiping her tears. Your dad is a good man. Please stay. If you're anything like him, you'll be an incredible player. I won't let this happen again. Stay, Kansas. Please. Kansas hesitated, then allowed Laura to lead her back to the bench. Laura turned to the team. I know you all saw what happened, so let me explain. This is Kansas Masterson, my ex-husband's daughter. Seeing her caught me off guard. I haven't seen her father in 6 years, and even though I knew he was back, I wasn't prepared for this. Be kind to her. She's not responsible for the past. She then looked at Kansas. Is your mom around? I'd love to meet her and tell her what a wonderful daughter she raised. Kansas's voice softened. My mom died when I was 3. It was just me and Dad after that. I'm sorry for what I said earlier. I was being a brat, and now Dad's punishing me for it. Laura tensed, the timeline clicking into place. Kansas's mom had died a decade ago when Jack was still in high school. That didn't add up, but she let it go. We got off on the wrong foot, Laura said. Let's start fresh. I'm Coach Masterson, and you're Kansas. Let's play some soccer. After practice, Kansas climbed into her grandmother's SUV. How was your first day? Janet asked. Good, Kansas replied. The team's strong. I think we'll do well. And the coach? Janet asked, her voice careful. Kansas smirked. You mean Laura? Janet sighed. Yes. How did she take it? Kansas shrugged. She was shocked. But she's different than I expected. She still cares about Dad, even after all this time. Janet's expression softened. Jack never told anyone why he left. One night, he just got in his truck and disappeared. I don't think he ever spoke to Laura again. Kansas clenched her jaw. She knows why. She's the reason he left. He's not the bad guy here. Janet raised an eyebrow. And you know this because... Kansas folded her arms. Dad told me if you want details, you'll have to ask him or Coach. At dinner, Jack cut into his pork chop. So how was soccer practice? Kansas shot a glance at Janet. Rough start. Coach didn't take my last name too well, but we worked it out. Jack noticed his mother wince. There was more to the story. Your coach is a friend of Laura's, isn't she? Kansas grinned. She is Laura. Jack froze, processing. Janet smirked, clearly enjoying his reaction. Mom, Jack sighed. I need an update on Laura's life. Spill. Janet leaned back, savoring the moment. She teaches math at Stone Ridge High and has coached soccer for 3 years. Her team only lost twice last season. Personally, she's still single, or still married to you, depending on who you ask. Most folks assume you left her for another woman. That's not true, Kansas blurted. Kansas, Jack warned. Respect Laura. Don't make me apologize for something you said. Kansas dropped her gaze. Jack exhaled. What did you do? Kansas hesitated. I called her something bad. Janet raised a brow. How bad? Kansas swallowed hard. I should probably whisper it. She leaned over, murmured it in Jack's ear. His entire body stiffened. Kansas, he said slowly, rubbing his temples. I told you that in confidence. Now I have to fix the mess you made. I regretted it the second I said it, Kansas admitted. It hurt her way more than I expected. She hesitated. Oh, and she told the team you're her ex-husband, so we can finally find you a new wife. Jack groaned. Laura barely held it together through practice, but the moment she got home, she broke down in tears. She told herself the next practice would be easier. No more surprises. Then she nearly walked straight into Jack Masterson. She had just grabbed her gear from her SUV when she turned and found him standing there. Laura, he said carefully, can we talk? I owe you an apology. She blinked. An apology? Jack sighed. Kansas told me what she said. It was out of line. I raised her better. He rubbed his neck. It's my fault. I told her why we broke up. She and Brian are the only ones who know. Laura swallowed. She's young, Jack. She wanted to hurt me. Jack nodded. Yeah, but she's not the only one still hurting. Laura hated how good he looked. Simple jeans, a fitted t-shirt, strong arms, that damn jawline. He was still the man she had loved. She didn't say anything untrue, Laura admitted, her voice unsteady. Unless you still think I'm beautiful. That's the only part you'd disagree with. She quickly wiped a tear before it could fall. Jack's voice softened. I don't want you suffering over what happened 6 years ago. It's in the past. We've moved on. Just like that, Laura said bitterly. We pretend we were never in love, never married. Easy. Her voice cracked and tears spilled over. Jack wanted to hold her, but he knew better. So he just stood there, watching. His gaze traced the curve of her jaw, the graceful line of her neck, the strength in her stance. Despite everything, she was still the most beautiful woman he had ever known. Laura took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Jack, for everything. I was a fool when I slept with him, and an even bigger fool for letting people believe you abandoned me. I thought if I kept quiet, you'd come back, that if I admitted what I did, we could never fix things. So I let everyone blame you." Her voice barely above a whisper, she added, "I'm going to tell the truth." Jack sighed. "I never cared what people thought. Easier for them to question my sanity than my character." Laura studied him. "You've always been a good man." She hesitated. "Your daughter is amazing. Please don't be too hard on her. She'll be my best player." Jack nodded. "Good seeing you, Laura. Let's keep things simple. No drama." He hesitated before adding, "You're even more beautiful than when we got married." "Thanks," Laura said with a wry smile. "And you've bulked up. Chiseled suits you." Jack noticed a group of girls whispering nearby. "Was that Kansas's dad?" one asked. "He's so hot." "Why did Coach let him go?" another wondered. "My mom's single," someone joked. That night, Laura had dinner with her family, a routine after practice. "How's the team looking?" her father asked, loading his plate with potatoes. "As strong as last year?" "Maybe my best team yet," Laura admitted, debating whether to mention Jack and Kansas. "Your star player's back, right?" Kate asked. "We've got a new standout," Laura said carefully. "You saw her the other day." Kate's eyes widened. "Jack's daughter? She's on your team? You can't make this up." "She's fast, smart, athletic, and a good kid," Laura replied. Kate grinned. "Did she know her stepmom would be coaching her?" "She was just as surprised as I was," Laura said. "But I think we'll get along." Janet spoke up. "Have you seen Jack? Did he have the nerve to face you?" "I saw him today. We talked. It wasn't as bad as I expected." Janet frowned. "And?" "He apologized," Laura said simply. "It doesn't change the past, but it was an honest conversation. No blame, no anger. He was a gentleman. He even told me I look better now than when we were married." "Hallelujah!" Janet threw up her hands. "So, you're finally divorced. Time to move on to someone who deserves you." Laura's voice wavered. "I almost had it all, Mom, and I lost it. I didn't deserve a good husband. I didn't keep the one I had." Her father muttered, "Maybe I should track him down and knock some sense into him." Kate smirked. "I wouldn't try it, Papa. He's got that don't mess with me look now." "Did he seem conflicted?" "That's an understatement," Laura admitted, wiping her tears. "I appreciate you wanting to protect me, Dad, but don't confront Jack. He's different now, stronger, more sure of himself." Janet huffed. "So that's it? He disappears for 6 years, comes back with a blonde daughter and offers no explanation? How did you not slap him?" Kate cut in. "Mom, please, look at her. She still loves him, more than the day he left." Laura shook her head, breaking down. "I'm a fool. Say it. I ruined the best thing I ever had. I deserve this." Kate took her hand. "You're not stupid, sis. I don't know what happened, but if you still love him, I'll help however I can. I just want you to be happy again." "There's nothing anyone can do," Laura whispered. "He divorced me. It's over." Kate hugged her, silent but determined. She was going to find Jack. She needed answers, and maybe, just maybe, she'd find a way to fix what was broken. Jack was about to give orders to his crew when Kate Johnson walked in. His men, well aware of his past with her sister, fell silent as she approached. "What can I do for you, Kate?" Jack asked, keeping his tone professional. "Lunch at Ellie's, noon. My treat," she said. Jack couldn't refuse, not in front of his crew. Besides, he had always liked Kate. At the diner, she stood and hugged him. "Thanks for coming. You look good." "You've grown into a stunning woman, Kate." "Good for my ego to be seen with you," Jack teased. "You always were a charmer," she said. "Let's eat first, then I have questions. Starting with, how did you get so jacked?" Once they ordered, Jack filled her in. "After I left Stone Ridge, I reconnected with Brian Masterson, my dad's cousin's son. He was older, a widower, raising his daughter alone. Kansas was 7 when I met her." He hesitated. 18 months ago, Brian was diagnosed with cancer. We had grown close, and he knew how much I cared about Kansas. Before he passed, he helped me adopt her. It wasn't easy, but we finalized it just before he died. Kate softened. "That must have been hard. Kansas adores you. I saw her at work the other day, but how did they let a single man adopt a teenage girl?" Jack sighed. "I didn't realize Laura had never filed for divorce. On the paperwork, I listed myself as married. I thought I still was." Kate nearly choked on her drink. Laura thought Jack had divorced her. Jack thought Laura had divorced him. That was useful information. She's my whole world now, Jack continued, but she worries about the adoption process. She knows how single men are scrutinized when adopting girls. She keeps pushing me to find a wife. What she really wants is a mom. Kate tucked that away for later. Which brings me to another reason I asked you here. You've seen Laura. She's beautiful, successful, and as far as I know, hasn't dated since you left. Is there any chance of working things out? Jack shook his head. Not happening, Kate. We're different people now. Our lives took separate paths. You've both changed for the better, Kate argued. She still loves you. Jack leaned back. Did she ever tell you why I left? She took all the blame. Never said a bad word about you. Jack smirked. Well, I'm back now. Took me 6 years. Kate studied him. So, what have you been up to? You're clearly in great shape. Brian owned a warehouse. His late wife had a dance studio there. He added a gym, then a dojo. 2 years ago, we started yoga classes upstairs. Believe it or not, I became a personal trainer, a yoga instructor, and a weekend sensei. Kate laughed. Not what I expected. Jack shrugged. It worked. I even finished my degree and got a teaching certificate. Helped when I was coaching martial arts and yoga. As they left, Kate hugged him. I'm sorry you won't give Laura another chance, but I'm glad we can be friends. I'd like that, Jack said. Tell your folks I said hi. Kate smirked. Might want to avoid them. They're still mad about how things ended. Jack chuckled. Not surprised. Your family always had your backs. The next morning, Laura felt lighter than she had in years. Making peace with Jack and herself, lifted a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. At practice, she noticed Kansas stretching while the other girls watched, fascinated. How do you stay balanced like that? One asked after toppling over. My dad taught me, Kansas said. It's a mix of yoga and martial arts. Your dad can do that, another girl asked skeptically. Most guys with muscles don't try, Kansas said. They prefer the fighting part. Maybe he could teach us, another girl suggested. Kansas hesitated. I don't know if Coach would go for that. Dad's really careful about working with underage girls. There's always another adult present. If Jack wants to show these girls how to stretch, I'll chaperone, Laura said, stepping closer. Might even intimidate the competition. Jack was surprised when he arrived to pick up Kansas and found the team and a few moms waiting for him. Dad, they want to learn my stretches. I told them you might do a session after practice, Kansas said. Jack's expression softened. I'll do it, but I need an adult present. Kansas already told us, Laura said. I volunteered. Some of us moms would like to join too, a red-haired woman added. Jack smirked. All right, wear something comfortable. The girls will pick it up fast. Moms, don't get frustrated if they outpace you. Jack never kept the sessions under an hour. The girls were determined, and 3 single moms showed up religiously, clearly more interested in Jack than yoga. But Laura was different, friendly, professional, never flirty, never distant. Before a big match, Kansas set up a Bluetooth speaker, leading her team through stretches to music. The routine caught the attention of opponents and spectators alike. The psychological edge paid off. They won in a landslide. Afterward, Kansas approached Laura. Coach, have you ever thought about entering Harper's tournament? Laura crossed her arms. It's a tough competition, mostly top-tier players from different schools. The 12-14 division is perfect for us, Kansas said. We could win, or at least hold our own. There's a $500 entry fee, Laura pointed out. The school won't cover it. Kansas was ready for this. If we register as an independent team and a sponsor covers the cost, will you coach us? Laura glanced at her players. Their determination was clear. They wanted this, and they wanted her to lead them. You know this won't be easy. These teams are stacked with all-stars, Laura warned. Kansas didn't flinch. I played in this tournament last year. We won 2 games and barely lost the third, to the team that won it all. We're good enough. We just need the right coach. You've done your homework, Laura said. Who's the sponsor? Local businesses pitched in, Kansas said quickly. Entry fees and hotel costs are covered. The tournament is over Columbus Day weekend, and if we make the final, we'll be there 3 nights. Laura admired Kansas's drive. She was already thinking about the championship. Even against stronger competition, Laura refused to crush that ambition. All right, let's do it, Laura said. The best way to get better is to play the best. Yes! The team erupted in cheers. Kansas handed Laura a slip of paper. Here's the site. I set up an account. Just confirm before midnight. They need 1 more team to complete the bracket. The entry fee is already paid. Laura smirked. You planned this well. Our team name is the Ridge Runners, Kansas added. We're getting custom shirts with our names on the back. It's going to be epic. When the two were alone, Laura gave her a knowing look. Jack's the sponsor, isn't he? Kansas grinned. Our sponsor prefers to remain anonymous, but if you hadn't agreed to coach, the deal was off. Apparently, our sponsor thinks you're a great coach and a good influence on us impressionable girls. So, does that mean Jack will stay away? Laura teased. Kansas laughed. Not a chance. He's watching everything. He just wants the best for me and the team. 2 weeks later, the Ridge Runners warmed up under a bright Saturday morning sky before their first tournament match. A surprising number of Stone Ridge fans had traveled to support them. Jack stood among them, cheering as Kansas led the team, keeping spirits high. He noticed the opposing team eyeing their synchronized stretches with curiosity. The game started with a shock. The opponent scored within the first minute. Then again, 2 minutes later. Laura's stomach tightened. Her team hadn't been behind all season. An injury briefly paused play, giving Laura a moment with Kansas. You see what's happening? Laura asked, voice steady. That girl is controlling the game. Every time she gets the ball, she's a threat. Make sure she's never unguarded. If we shut her down, we have a shot. The Ridge Runners adjusted, marking the opposing star, limiting her chances. At halftime, they were still trailing by 2. Laura huddled the team. They're focused on Kansas. That's fine. When she moves to one side, pass to the other. Their goalie hasn't been tested. Start taking shots. The second half opened with relentless pressure. 2 rebounds found the net. Then, in the final minute, Kansas broke free and scored the winning goal. The Ridge Runners had pulled off an upset. The girls celebrated, sprinting to Laura and their cheering fans. Jack swept Kansas into a bear hug before setting her down, grinning. One of the team moms kissed his cheek. Laura felt a strange pang of jealousy, but shook it off. She turned, only to find herself wrapped in strong arms. For a fleeting moment, she let herself enjoy the familiar embrace. Jack had always been strong, but now he felt like steel. She wasn't small, yet he lifted her effortlessly. Incredible coaching, Jack said. Kansas told me you were great, and she was right. Thanks for everything you've done for them. Thank you for sponsoring us, Laura replied. Some of these girls wouldn't be here without you. That was generous. I'd do anything for Kansas, Jack admitted. She loved this tournament last year. And she thinks you're a better coach than her old one. Dad, Kansas called. If you don't want me calling her Coach Mom, maybe let go so the rest of us can hug her. Jack chuckled, setting Laura down. Sorry, Laura. Got carried away. I don't think she minded, Kansas teased. You already have a room, Jack, Laura joked. Jack smirked. Her mom had the same sense of humor. The next morning, Kansas dominated, scoring 3 of the team's 5 goals in a 5-3 victory, sending them to the semifinals. Their next match was against Kansas's former travel team. Before the game, she chatted with her old teammates. It was clear she liked them, and that their parents adored Jack. With limited seating, fans from both teams mixed in the bleachers. A few moms took turns hugging Jack, wishing him luck. The game was intense. Since the tournament was a fundraiser, high school players officiated. Most parents were understanding. Then a bad call happened. A throw-in mistakenly awarded to the Ridge Runners. A large man stormed onto the field, berating the teenage referee. His voice boomed with threats. Laura was already moving as the girl burst into tears and ran, straight into Jack's arms. He held her protectively. A woman's voice rang out from the stands. Jack Masterson is about to kick that guy's A. The man hesitated, sizing Jack up. Jack didn't move, just kept his voice low and steady. Apologize to Macy and leave. These girls are doing their best. They don't deserve this. The man shifted, uneasy. Another voice called out. You better listen to Jack, buddy. You're about to regret this. Laura turned. Macy's mom. She'd seen her earlier. The man grumbled an apology and slunk away. The girl in Jack's arms wiped her eyes, then kissed his cheek. Thank you, Jack, she said. Mom was right. You were ready to take him down. Applause rippled through the crowd. Macy trained at Jack's dojo, her mother explained. She thinks the world of him, and I don't blame her. Jack doesn't tolerate bullies. I was worried Jack might get hurt, another mom whispered. Macy's mom laughed. Jack? Honey, that man wouldn't have lasted 5 seconds. The game resumed. In the final minute, Kansas sent a perfect pass to a teammate, who buried it in the net, securing the win. Afterward, Kansas hugged nearly every player on the other team. Jack watched, proud of her sportsmanship. Macy's mom hugged him tightly. Macy knew she could count on you. She really looks up to you, Jack. Her grades have improved and she's heading to college next year to study teaching. You helped set her on the right path. Why was Rick Jefferson even here? A Ridge Runner's dad asked. Backbone, his wife answered. Sarah, the girl who scored the winning goal, is his niece. She must be mortified. The championship game was set for the next morning. With schools closed for Columbus Day, the tournament would wrap up with a final match and an awards ceremony. The Ridge Runners had dominated so far, improving with each game. Their fans were in awe of how quickly they adapted and refined their skills. With less than 3 minutes left in the championship, a Ridge Runners defender intercepted a pass. Kansas seized the moment, sprinting past defenders and firing the ball into the net, tying the game. The Stone Ridge crowd erupted. Their opponents, unfazed, quickly reset. Both teams fought with everything they had. In the final seconds, the other team scored, clinching the victory. The Ridge Runners had come so close. Despite the loss, Laura watched with pride as her girls embraced, then congratulated the winners. Parents and fans flooded the field, showering them with praise. During the awards ceremony, Laura accepted the second-place trophy to thunderous cheers. The tournament MVP went to a player from the winning team, but Kansas was awarded the sportsmanship trophy. She held it high, grinning as her teammates applauded. Afterward, Kansas hugged Jack. Thanks for everything, Dad. Can I ride home with some teammates? Jack checked with the parents before agreeing. As he watched the van pull away, he felt a light touch on his hand. She's an amazing girl, Laura said softly. You're doing a great job with her. Jack kept his eyes on the road ahead. I have no clue how to raise a daughter. Women are a mystery. You've proven that. Laura winced but didn't let it show. Jack, I was wrong, she admitted. I have no excuse. You were right to leave. I'd like for us to talk without anger. Jack exhaled. You're right. No point in rehashing the past. You've done a great job coaching. Kansas respects you. She knows you could have made things hard for her, but you didn't. Laura's expression softened. I may have been a fool when we got married, but I was never cruel. I care about Kansas. I'd love to stay in her life. But if you think I'm a bad influence, I'll step back. Jack shook his head. I'd like you to be part of her life. She needs strong role models. Laura gave him a skeptical look. You know I'm far from perfect. Jack smirked. Everyone I talk to says otherwise. She arched a brow. Since you came back, maybe. But we both know I gave people plenty of reasons to think differently before you left. Jack noticed her parents watching from a distance, their expressions tight with disapproval. They look like they swallowed lemons, he muttered. Laura sighed. They blame you. They're good people. I wish you'd never told them the truth. Wouldn't have changed anything. Laura hesitated. Have a safe trip, Jack. Thanks for talking to me. I finally made peace with everything. Jack nodded. For the first time, they had spoken without bitterness. That, to Laura, felt like a victory. At dinner, Laura wasn't surprised when her mother pressed her for details. So, Brenda asked, setting down her fork, what did you and Jack talk about? Family, Laura said, stirring her mashed potatoes. I told him he's raising a wonderful daughter. He downplayed it. He also said I have great parents. Janet scoffed. Before or after, he caught us glaring at him. After, Laura admitted with a smirk. He's not stupid. He knows why you don't like him. He actually respects it. Her father grumbled. Shame he wasn't that honorable about his marriage. 3 days later, Laura sat at the dinner table, drained. Kate noticed immediately. What's wrong? You look like hell. Sarah Jefferson talked to me after practice, Laura said, rubbing her forehead. Her Uncle Rick has a friend in Jack's old county. Turns out, when Jack adopted Kansas, he listed himself as married to me. Apparently, single men have a hard time adopting teenage girls. Rick was still mad about the tournament and reported him. Now there's an investigation, and Jack could lose Kansas. The table fell silent. Sarah said Kansas cried when she found out, Laura added. I know Jack. He'll run before he lets them take her. He's good at running from problems, her father muttered. Laura barely heard him. He's not giving her up. I know him. Kate suddenly sat up. Laura, you're still married to him. Laura's head snapped up. What? He thought you divorced him. You thought he divorced you? But neither of you actually did. You're still as married as the day you left the church. Brenda waved dismissively. What difference does it make? He's still living as a single man, Kate smirked. Laura, call Jack. If he and Kansas move in with you, they'll match exactly what he told the court. Problem solved. I won't allow it, Brenda said. You don't know who he is anymore. He could be dangerous. Laura shook her head. Jack isn't like that. He'd never hurt me. I'm going to him. At Jack's house, Kansas curled in his lap, sobbing. His mother, Janet, wrung her hands as the doorbell rang. Janet answered to find Laura. Can I talk to you and Kansas? Jack didn't look up. Not a good time, Laura. We're packing. You don't have to leave, Laura said softly. Jack exhaled. This isn't your problem. She's my daughter, too. Kansas lifted her tear-streaked face. Janet gasped. Jack's voice hardened. If you try to take her, you're in for a fight. I'm still your wife, Laura said. Legally, I'm her mother. I'm probably on the paperwork. Janet's eyes widened. If you move in with Laura, it fixes everything, Jack scoffed. And when she decides she's done with us? Laura's patience snapped. Jack, I made one mistake, and I've paid for it every day since. I won't do that to you again. If it helps, I'll put your name on my house deed. She turned to Kansas, her voice softening. I love you like a daughter. I'd be honored to be your mom. Kansas hesitated, then turned to Jack. Dad, can we try, please? Jack rubbed his eyes, weighing his options. Laura folded her arms. What's your plan? Flee the country? That's not realistic. This is. Jack sighed heavily. Fine, Kansas squealed, hugging Laura. Jack rubbed his temples. I feel like I've lost control. Jack frowned as he looked at Laura's small ranch house. 2 bedrooms? How's this supposed to work? Kansas grinned. Easy math. 2 people share. 1 gets their own. I'm not sharing with you, Kansas, Jack said flatly. Obviously not, she replied. I'm a teenage girl. I need my own space. But you and Laura are married. Sharing shouldn't be a problem. We're faking a family, not sleeping arrangements, Jack countered. Sleeping? Kansas teased. Just sleeping. Still part of the act. Laura sighed. Am I invisible here? Kansas smirked. I get my own room. You 2 share. Mom even promised you closet space. By 11 that night, Jack and Kansas had officially moved in. Before bed, Kansas hesitated. Is it okay if I call you Mom? It'll seem more natural if anyone checks in. Laura's throat tightened. Honey, nothing would make me happier, Kansas beamed. What about at school? You've called me coach all year. No need to change that now, Jack advised. We need to look like a family, not like we suddenly became one overnight. Kansas nodded. Fair enough. But I'm the only one going home with Mom after practice, helping her cook and clean. I finally have a real family. Jack almost warned her not to get carried away, but Laura caught his eye and shook her head slightly. He got the message. That night, Jack emerged from the bathroom, hesitating before getting into bed. You wear pajamas now, Laura noted. You used to sleep without clothes. Jack shrugged. Kansas lives with me. I make an effort. Laura smirked. I won't call the cops if you forget and put an arm around me in your sleep. Jack sighed. Not a problem. He rolled onto his back and was asleep in minutes. Jack always woke early. At 5, he opened his eyes. He was still on his side of the bed, undisturbed. After soccer practice that evening, Laura took Kansas to visit her parents. As soon as they walked in, Kansas stood in front of Brenda. Your daughter is my mom now. Can I call you Grandma? Brenda had planned to disapprove of the whole arrangement, but at those words, her resistance crumbled. Of course you can, she said, pulling Kansas into a hug. Would you like some cookies? I just made some. Kate walked in, grinning. Mom's heart has officially melted. I'm Aunt Kate, by the way, and you are now my favorite niece. Kansas beamed. New grandma, new aunt. This deal keeps getting better. Hopefully we can spend more time together, she added. Dad knows Grandma isn't his biggest fan, so we'll probably visit when he's working. Well, I happen to like your dad, Kate teased. He's a good-looking guy. Kansas raised an eyebrow. And how do he and Mom get along? Kate shrugged. They set rules for sharing a room. Pretty sure that's not standard family behavior. Kansas smirked. Daddy's a red-blooded man and Mom looks like a mannequin, but curvier. He doesn't stand a chance. Laura blushed. Okay, that's enough. Brenda narrowed her eyes. You're not thinking about getting back together, are you? Mom, I stopped by for recipes, not a lecture, Laura replied. And no, Jack barely tolerates me, so you can rest easy. Jack arrived home shortly after they started dinner. He barely said a word before heading outside with a notebook and a measuring tape. Once they finished eating, Jack laid his plan on the table. Laura, I want to add on to the house. A 26 by 14-foot extension. Big bedroom, private bath, walk-in closet, plus a guest half bath. Want to see my design? Laura's eyes widened. That sounds great, but I can't afford it. I've barely managed my mortgage as it is. I'll cover it, Jack said. You're making a huge sacrifice for Kansas and me. It'll add value to your home and give us more space. Laura folded her arms. Sleeping next to me, is that unbearable? Jack sighed. It's not that. This will make things more comfortable. We'll still use the master bedroom, just with more space. Laura leaned back. Fine, but on one condition, you sleep in the same bed the whole time we live together. Agree or forget it. Jack glanced at Kansas, who was barely holding in laughter. He sighed. Deal. As soccer season wrapped up, Jack overheard Laura talking to Kansas about volleyball. By the end of the conversation, Kansas had joined the team. Jack noticed how close they'd grown. They joked, cooked together, went shopping, and trained side by side. Kansas was as happy as Jack had ever seen her. His relationship with Laura was more complicated. She respected his space, but was never cold or distant. She never complained about the construction or the chaos in her house. Within a week, Jack had a backhoe digging up the yard. The mild climate meant they could keep building well into the fall, and by Christmas, the addition would be complete. Laura and Kansas were thrilled. Kansas would get Laura's old room, complete with her own bathroom and closet. Jack and Laura planned for any possible adoption inquiries. At first, they prepared for officials to come knocking, but as time passed, they began to wonder if the whole thing had been overblown. The sleeping arrangements never changed. Both wore pajamas. Jack no longer worried about waking up too close to Laura or finding himself in an awkward position. One night, as he lay thinking about the next phase of the construction, he felt Laura tense beside him. Then, to his surprise, she reached out, resting her hand on his chest with a contented sigh before drifting into a deep sleep. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Laura and Kansas pulled into the driveway to find Jack talking to a blonde woman. Laura recognized her immediately, Beth Harding. Jack came inside a few minutes later, his expression unreadable. Kansas had gone to her room, leaving them alone. That was Beth Harding, he said casually, watching Laura's reaction. Laura stiffened, gripping the kitchen counter. Her voice was barely above a whisper. What did she want? Was she angry? Jack exhaled. Her husband, Chuck, has a brain tumor. He's dying. She asked if I'd visit him. Laura spun to face him, her expression stricken. Don't do it. He just wants to gloat, to hurt you. Please, Jack. Don't let him. I told her I would. Jack's voice was calm, but there was an edge beneath it. Even if it's just to watch him die. He'll tell you I was easy, Laura whispered, her voice breaking. That he didn't even have to try. That it wasn't just that night. He'll laugh in your face. She swallowed hard. He's cruel, Jack. I was stupid, but a real man wouldn't have gone after a married woman. Jack's jaw tightened. Then why did you let him? Laura's breath caught. I don't know, she admitted, hugging herself. He was the campus star, the senior soccer player everyone admired. And I was just someone's wife, off limits to most men, but not to him. He was charming, and I was foolish enough to think I could handle it, that you'd never know. She wiped at her eyes. It was the only time, but one time was enough to ruin everything. Jack's gaze was hard. You didn't seem like a woman full of regret that night, Laura. You were saying his name like he was the best thing that ever happened to you. His voice was steady but cold. I thought about eliminating you both. Instead, I just walked out the back door and drove away. Tears streamed down Laura's face. I never blamed you for leaving. The moment I saw your ring on the table, I knew I'd destroyed us. She took a shaky breath. I love Kansas, but we're not a real family. You and I will never have that love again, and that's my fault. I live with it every day. Jack's voice dropped. Why didn't you just tell me you weren't happy? I was happy, she whispered. I didn't want other men. I just wanted to feel special. And for one night, the high school golden boy wanted me. She let out a bitter laugh. The irony? After you left, I finally grew up, and you became even better. Kinder, stronger, more devoted. You became the man I should have never lost. She exhaled shakily. Believe it or not, that was the last time I had sex. She met his gaze. You're the only man who ever made love to me. That night with him? It wasn't love. Now, I know the difference. Jack's eyes darkened. I rushed home from that seminar to surprise you, to spend the night with my wife. Instead, I walked in on that. You nearly eliminated me, Laura, and an apology doesn't erase 6 years of pain. I know, she whispered. I don't expect forgiveness. You're not the kind of man who forgets betrayal. She blinked back fresh tears. Every time I look at you in Kansas, I'm reminded of how stupid I was, and the pain hasn't faded. It's gotten worse, because my love for both of you has only grown." Jack didn't speak. Laura forced a smile. "Every night I lie next to you and hope, just once, you'll touch me, that you'll hold me, kiss me. But you never do." She let out a sad laugh. "It's not even hard for you to resist me, is it?" Jack said nothing. "Karma's a witch," Laura murmured. In early December, Jack walked into the hospital and asked for Chuck Harding. He wasn't prepared for what he saw. Chuck was skeletal, his skin stretched thin over his bones, his eyes sunken. He barely looked alive. "Jack," Chuck rasped, forcing a weak smile. "If you want to hit me, go ahead. I deserve it." Jack crossed his arms. "I just came to tell you how much I enjoy watching you die." Chuck let out a wheezing chuckle. "That's why I asked you here. I thought my suffering might make you feel better." Jack narrowed his eyes. "Cut the crap. What do you really want?" Chuck's expression sobered. "I spent most of my life being an a-hole. You caught me in bed with your wife, and you didn't eliminate me. I saw your rifle downstairs that night. Laura just saw the ring on the table." He exhaled shakily. "I've never seen a woman look more devastated than she did that night." Jack clenched his jaw. "I owe you," Chuck continued, his voice weaker. "But I have no way to pay you back. My life's over. The only thing I can offer is letting you watch me die. If that helps you, then take it." Jack scoffed. "And your wife's okay with that?" "She understands." Chuck's voice cracked. "She knows I want to do something. Anything to ease my conscience. Dying won't fix what I did. But maybe if it gives you some peace, it's worth something." He smirked faintly. "Just don't clap when the Grim Reaper shows up." It upset Beth. Jack's jaw tightened. "Why did you do it, Chuck? You had women throwing themselves at you." "Why my wife?" Chuck exhaled. "Because I could." Jack's fists clenched. "That's it? That's the reason?" Chuck let out a ragged breath. "I didn't care about you, or your marriage, or Laura. She was just another conquest." His voice cracked. "It wasn't until I met Beth that I realized how worthless I was." Jack's expression darkened. "You ruined my life." "For what?" Chuck's voice was barely a whisper. "Nothing. It meant nothing." Jack's fists shook. "If you weren't already dying, I'd eliminate you myself." "If I weren't dying, I'd let you." Chuck's weak smile faded. "I deserve worse." Jack inhaled sharply, his whole body tense. "I should smother you with this pillow." Chuck gave a wheezing laugh. "You could, but you'd go to prison and I'd still be dead." Jack stared at him for a long moment. "Come back anytime," Chuck murmured. "Maybe you'll get to see me go." Jack turned on his heel and stalked out of the room. For the next several weeks, he visited Chuck regularly. He never told Laura or Kansas. On his third visit, Beth was there with a little boy. Jack barely nodded to her before turning and walking out. Even as much as he hated Chuck Harding, he couldn't take pleasure in watching a dying man suffer in front of his wife and child, but he still came back. Chuck Harding deserved every second of it. The next time Jack visited, Chuck was quieter, his usual bravado replaced by something more reflective. "You left last time because my wife and kid were here, didn't you?" Chuck's voice was weak but sharp. "Hard to enjoy watching me suffer when you see the people it actually hurts, huh?" Jack crossed his arms. "I'm here for you, not them," he said coolly, though he couldn't ignore how hollow the words felt. Chuck talked about his son, his favorite books, his quirks, his dreams. Then he spoke about Beth, how she changed him, how she made him a better man. Jack knew what he was doing, trying to humanize himself to earn some sympathy. It wasn't going to work. On Christmas Eve, Jack visited again. Chuck looked worse than ever, frail, barely holding on. This time, Jack had something to say. "I hate what you did," Jack said evenly, "but I can't keep hating you. The best revenge isn't watching you die, it's living well. So here's what's going to happen. I'll make sure Beth and Charlie never need anything. You'll leave this world knowing that the man you screwed over is the one taking care of your family." Chuck let out a weak chuckle. "I get why you think that's revenge," he murmured. "You're really bad at it, though." Jack's jaw tightened. "I regret what I did to you and Laura," Chuck admitted, his voice raspier. "Funny how one horrible thing ended up securing my family's future. Ironic, isn't it?" Jack exhaled. "It's the best I could come up with." Chuck studied him. "You won't be back, will you?" Jack shook his head. "No, I don't need to see you die. There's no satisfaction in it." Chuck gave him a faint smile. You realize that's basically forgiveness, right? Jack's fists clenched. Think whatever you want. I don't care. Chuck's voice softened even more. You can forgive me, the man who destroyed your life, but not Laura, the woman who still loves you. Why? Jack's chest tightened. Imagine how good it felt to let go of your hate for me, Chuck continued. Now imagine how good it'll feel if you forgive her. You could have your family back, Jack. You could be happy, but instead, you're punishing her. Jack's jaw clenched. Screw you, Harding. You're the one who said I forgave you. I never did. Chuck smirked. Not in words, but you did. He exhaled, his voice barely a whisper. If I don't see you again, tell Laura I'm sorry. Jack walked out furious. That smug idiot thought he'd been forgiven. Worse, he had the nerve to suggest Jack should forgive Laura. That was never going to happen. As he drove home, Chuck's words echoed in his mind. Damn it. He never should have visited. When he reached his street, his driveway was packed with cars. That's when he remembered. The Christmas party. Kansas and Laura had planned it for weeks. The house addition had been completed 2 days ago, and the new furniture, including the ridiculously large bed Laura had insisted on, was moved in yesterday. Jack was still fuming when he walked inside. The room fell silent. Laura and Kansas were serving drinks, chatting with guests. But as soon as they saw Jack, something shifted. Kansas, ever perceptive, muttered, "Uh-oh." She'd never seen that look on her father's face before. Jack's gaze locked onto Laura. He stopped moving. Laura set down her tray, her voice cautious. "What's wrong, Jack?" Jack's voice was steady but thick with emotion. "Do you really want to be my wife?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Laura's breath hitched. "Yes," she answered softly but firmly. Jack took a step forward. "A wife belongs to her husband, only to him." Kate grabbed her father's arm before he could step in, silently telling him to stay out of it. Laura nodded. "I agree. A husband provides for his family, protects them. He deserves respect." "Yes," she whispered. Jack's voice dropped lower. "And a good wife doesn't complain when her husband takes her whenever he needs her." He paused. "Including right now. On that damn bed you picked out." The room went dead silent. Then, to everyone's shock, Laura whispered, "Not if he loves her, and she loves him." Jack's eyes darkened with something fierce. "Right," he said roughly, then without another word, scooped her into his arms. "Kansas, close the door behind us." "Sure thing, Dad," Kansas replied cheerfully, shutting the bedroom door. She turned to the stunned guest with a grin. "So, who wants more eggnog?" Laura's mother blinked. "Did that just happen? Is she okay?" Kate smirked. "Oh, she's better than okay. She's finally happy." 30 minutes later, Jack and Laura emerged, freshly showered, dressed in new clothes. Laura was glowing, curled against Jack's side, smiling softly. One of Jack's crew members chuckled. "That was quick. Hope the boss got the job done." Laura grinned. "He did very well. Thanks for asking." She kissed Jack's cheek. Jack shook his head, amused. Then he spotted Laura's father approaching. "I don't know what just happened," her father said gruffly, "but her mother and I are glad things are better." He held out a hand. "Just don't screw it up again." Jack shook it firmly. "Not a chance." He glanced at Laura. "We're not letting go of this again." Kate crossed her arms, smug. "You do realize it was my idea for you two to move in together for Kansas's adoption, right?" "Funny how nothing ever came of that investigation," she added. Kansas giggled. "Oh, it happened. A social worker came to my school. I told them I had the best family ever, that my parents loved me and each other. I just left out the part about how long they'd been acting like a family." She shrugged. "I figured you two would catch up eventually." Jack's mother, who had been watching quietly, finally spoke. "Jack, why were you so emotional when you got home?" Jack exhaled, his fingers gently tracing circles on Laura's back. "I spent 6 years trying to hurt someone. And in the end, the only one suffering was me." He pulled Laura closer. "I finally realized revenge doesn't heal anything. Love does." Laura smiled up at him. "So I'm stuck with you forever?" Jack kissed her forehead. "Afraid so." The room erupted in cheers and laughter. The past was behind them, and their future had just begun.